But what we're going to do, right, so we have our little test application here. I am using Postman, which is just a little API, a tool that allows you to send web requests to APIs and see the results, right? So I have a couple of different environments set up here, and it basically just controls this server name. And when I change the environment, or obviously my server name is local. When I switch to QA, my server name is, to an actually deployed site. So we have our simple API. We can list customers. Right, I'm going against QA. Let's go against local. Let's resend that. All right, we can list our customers. Here we got Rob and Frank. We can get a customer by ID. We can add a new customer, which I won't do, and we can delete a customer. So basic RESTful type API here. So for our example, what we're going to do is we're going to implement a small but non-trivial feature to this API and actually push it through the whole process. So in our new feature will be we have our customers, and we're going to allow we're going to add a customer type to our customers. And our customers can be either standard customers or premium customers. And we are going to so obviously it's a thin vertical slice throughout the system. It's going to require database changes, going to require business logic changes, and it's going to require API changes. So those are our kind of 3 levels of quality gates: our unit tests, integration tests, and acceptance tests. So we're going to implement, as we implement this feature, we're going to show how we use those quality gates to make sure that the process goes very, very smoothly. So I'm actually not going to code it live. We've already kind of implemented the changes, but I'll walk you through the changes as we go. So right. So we have our application. We saw how that works. First thing I'm going to do is, before I start working on anything, I want to make sure that my local build is in good shape, right? So I'm going to run my build script. And make sure that everything builds locally and all my tests pass. And this, the great part about the coded build process is that this process that I'm running here on my local machine is the exact same process that my build server does, so that I know exactly, if anything goes wrong, I can replicate it locally, right? So everything looks good here. I'm going to check out the feature branch where we've added our customer type, and of course, I have a problem with my carriage return settings in Git. That's giving me a little hassle right there. All right, so we've switched to our demo. We're going to reload our project. And so let's walk through this process, right? So we want to talk about implementing this change from the perspective of unit tests or automated tests. So in this branch, basically what I've done is I've added some unit tests here to verify that my customer should start off as a standard customer, and then after I call the method, it should be a premium customer. So since I've implemented those changes, go ahead and run my tests. We're going to pretend like I'm actually going through this process and coding it live, right? So this would be the process. Start with a unit test, get everything working with your unit test locally. And since I only run the one, I'll run the other one. All right, so everything's now passing here. Right, so now that our business logic is working, now I actually have to update my database, right? So this is where a lot of teams get into trouble, and where the process kind of becomes manual, because a lot of teams, have a lot of automation on the code side, but not necessarily a lot of automation on the database side. So we're using a database migrations framework that allows us effectively to code our database changes as we go, right? So here, we're going to create a new customer type. We're going to add some values to the lookup table. We're going to add our column to our customer. We're going to create a foreign key that joins them together, and that should be all she wrote. So since I'm working here locally and I built my code, but I haven't built my database yet, so let's go ahead and run this test and see if it works. And it doesn't, because our database is not in sync with the code. So because we have these awesome build scripts, we can quickly remedy that by migrating our local database so that it has all of the migrations in our solution, right? So we see we applied a new migration, and now when we run our test, all of the tests pass. And basically, what this test does is it creates a new customer, saves it to the database, pulls it back, and makes sure that the customer that was created and the customer that came out of the database are exactly the same. Right, so now we have our database stuff is now working. So now we actually have to implement the new API, right? So for that, we're going to apply an acceptance test. And what this acceptance test does is it allows the customer to be upgraded. So we're walking through the process as basically like a consumer of our API would, right? So they would create a customer, they would query it back from the API and say, all right, this is a standard customer. Then we upgrade the customer via the API, and then we query it back again and make sure that the customer should be a premium customer. Let's go ahead and build this just to make sure the latest code is available. I'm going to run my acceptance test against my local machine. And as we can see, all of these passed. For those on the call who are more technical, who want a deeper dive into this, feel free to reach out to us after the fact. We can show you kind of the technical details of this. So that's it. We have our feature implemented. All of our tests are passing locally. Before we kick it up to the build server, we'll go ahead and just do a sanity check. Run all of our unit tests just as the build server would. And we can see that the test is passing, hopefully. Unless the demo gods have a problem. No, everybody's good. And we have 3 acceptance tests and everything's working. Excellent. So now on my local machine, we can see we have our new use case. Now when we list customers, we can see that we have a new customer type that we've implemented as part of our code change, right? So we have some changes here because of the carriage return issue that I'm dealing with. So we're ready to push this up, so we're going to check out our master branch. We're going to merge our feature. Oops. Typo. And we're going to push this up to our Git server, which works. Now, once this happens, typically our continuous integration server will kick off automatically. I'm just going to speed up the process by kicking it off manually. All right, so now our build server is actually building the source that we just pushed up. We see our new change has come through, and this takes about 2 minutes. All right, so this build is done. I'm going to switch over to my QA environment just to show, right, that this is the old version of our code. Right, we don't have our customer type. And then I'm going to go ahead and kick off our deployment, which we see we have a new pending change that hasn't gone to deployment yet. And we'll let this run. It's basically going to do the same thing as a continuous integration process, and the last step is push it out to Octopus. And we can actually, when that happens, we'll be able to look at our deployment server and see the application and all the different steps being deployed.
And
quickly here, I just want you to catch this. This is the actual application being deployed by our deployment server. If you caught it, you saw that each of these steps are actually going in sequence. So now, let's switch over to our QA environment. Let's refresh our request. And now we can see that our code change is deployed, right? So we've taken this little feature and gone end to end. So I think since we're running low on time, I'm not going to kick this off to production because we'll have to wait a little longer for that. But the process effectively would be, once you have this release, you're happy with it using the tools, you simply promote to production, and it pushes it up the chain, and your code is live. So it's a very smooth process. It's a very well-defined process, and once it's in place, certainly I hope you guys can see the value and be able to see kind of how all these things happen in real time.